I thank Dr. Pillsbury for his speech and now look to Dr. Kerry Brown to close the case for the opposition and the debate as a whole.
Great, well, thank you very much, Madam President. In fact, I spoke here 10 years ago, and nothing's changed. So, even Mike, no, I don't think you were there then. Firstly, I just want to thank the excellent opposition. I have not heard a fairy tale for a long time, right? And it's just been so reassuring. This is a lovely, neat world. Everything is good, bad. It's, sort of evil, and I was going to say that the reason why Mike isn't going to be at the Communist Party's 100th anniversary is because he's going to be at his own, but that would be me now.
You just lost more votes.
So I guess there's going to be four things I'll say. The proposition about the Cold War, that's the proposition. But the Cold War was over, right? Didn't we win that? Didn't the West win that? So how can you re-fight a war that you won? And presumably we're moving into a different kind of era, a more complex one. But I don't think it'll be cold, not with climate warming anyway, and it won't be a war. So, apart from that, sure, the proposition's right. The second is, the second thing is, well, what kind of issue are we dealing with? I don't agree that it is because we are facing a power that has a set of values that wants us to accept those. I think China knows that the market for personified Marxism, Leninism, and Xi Jinping for the new era is limited in the West. Apart from the current leader of the Labour Party, maybe, that's the only person who probably would hang up to that, or Bernie Sanders. So I think it knows that we're not going to adopt those values. We are therefore facing a partner or a party that is not in the business of proselytizing, so it's not like the USSR. It is in the business of saying to others, it's fine you have your universalist values, but we don't subscribe to them. So that's a different kind of dissidence, but it's not proselytizing. The second thing, I suppose, is the proposition that China needs to change. And I guess as an ex-diplomat, I know that's kind of morally quite satisfying. The problem is we always get tripped up by our sort of moral desires to see people like us. But I think there's two things we should think about there. The first is in the 1980s, during the era of engagement from Europe and America towards China, with our attractive values, our Enlightenment values, with our excellent economies, with all our geopolitical strengths, it didn't work. We, in all of the kind of efforts to change China through economic means and engagement, we've ended up with Xi Jinping. So I don't know why we are so unsettled by a few Confucius institutes and China with its particularly clunky kind of PR coming and doing the things it does. Sure, interference is something we should be aware of, but it's done badly, right? So, I don't know why we're so rattled. And I've asked my colleagues at my own institute, King's College, and they are blissfully unaware of this influence going on. Obviously, it seems not to be really working. And I guess the second thing is that we are, we are kind of dealing, I think, with a sense of disappointment. We are hypocrites. We are real hypocrites. We kind of are disappointed and in the game of punishment because China didn't end up the way we wanted. But there were many, many complicated variables in that whole story. And I don't think it's particularly right to rob many, many people in China of their agency. There are people who are suffering very badly. I know that. But there are also many, many people who aren't. There are many, many people who are in between. It's complicated. And these moral narratives of us wanting China to be like us, to have our values, when you think of the mess we're in at the moment, I don't know. I think that is brave. It's not surprising we've ended up with this more complicated world. The sort of third thing, I suppose, is, kind of what kind of world are we moving into? We are probably moving, for the first time in history, from a sort of world in which there was a fairly uniform value system to one in which there are separate value systems now. Chinese value systems broadly is more hybrid. I guess it's not so uniform. It's more hybrid. It's very paradoxical in a way. There is this communist system, but actually underneath it there is this thing, as other speakers spoke about, this complex root of values from Taoism, Confucianism, Buddhism, and now Xi Jinping thought. So this is a complicated situation. In a weird way, isn't that kind of the world we want, a pluralistic world? Aren't we into diversity? Aren't we into kind of wanting a world with more kind of variety? We're the ones that are always trying to embrace the other and embrace the new. Our Enlightenment values should mean that this is a great opportunity. It should be very liberating. There is a power that's coming along with a radically different view of the world. It doesn't want our space. I think some people have said that. It wants a different kind of space. It is not someone that wants to change others. It wants its exclusive values and it's excluding. I mean, that is a different issue to someone coming along and saying they want to, what?
Does it not want to change the Uyghurs?
Do I have to answer that? No. I mean, I don't, no. I mean, sorry, I mean, that's a different issue. So, because that's domestic, right? I'm talking about abroad. I mean, you know, the issue in China, of course, is that it does use violence in China, paradoxically, but it doesn't, I mean, it hasn't fired a shot beyond its shores since 1986. That's a really weird thing. It's a passive power. The problem is it's a passive power. It's not what it does, it's what it doesn't do. So very, very finally, you know, the kind of world we're moving into, so we are now, you know, kind of living in a bungalow, and we're moving into a two-story house, and most accidents happen on the stairs. We do have a choice. We can move into a ruin, okay? But I don't think that that's obviously very sensible. So this two-story world that we're moving into is going to be very, very difficult and tough. And having these very clear binary sort of moral narratives is not going to be very useful. It is impractical, as Richard Nixon said in 1968, to say to a fifth of humanity, you must go away. It's not going to happen. It is a fantasy. We have to be realistic. Very finally, over the last 20 years, my job has partly been obviously talking about China, but it's partly, I realized, just recently been going around comforting Americans. And as you kind of see, I'm alone here. I'm the only person with a British accent speaking. So I suppose what I want to say is we love America, right? We think America is great. There's always that moment when we talk to Americans, though, when they kind of sigh a bit and they realize we're not American. And I suppose we have to live with that, right? We're never going to, you know, we just have to, what is the famous SpongeBob, you know, kind of, don't stop being adorable, right? I mean, you know, we have to say that to America all the time, don't stop being adorable. But we have to also say, please, would you leave us alone, right? Han Fei, the great Warring States philosopher, said, 2,400 years ago, you should always guard against your enemies. That's true. But know that calamity comes from those you love. Thank you very much.